and but I was a Tassie girl, and I was looking for excitement in the big city. So compared to Darwin and Launceston, Perth was big, even in 1984. So I'd been sitting on this Greyhound coach for 3 days, sitting upright, eating nothing but roadhouse food, and getting way too up close and personal to my sweaty travel companions. So I was pretty stoked when I arrived in Perth, and I checked into CWA House in West Perth. That week, I got to it. I went swimming at Scarborough Beach, I got drunk at the OBH, I had McDonald's for the very first time in my life, and I had my first one-night stand, in that order. So I thought I'd better go and find myself some accommodation and a job to fund my newfound lifestyle. So fate would have it that I found both of those things in the same place. The same place where I signed up for some share accommodation, imaginatively called Flatshare Perth, was run by this woman Veronica, who also ran a matchmaking agency side by side. And looking back, I can see that there was probably a lot of overlaps. So Veronica obviously saw something in me that she liked, so she offered me a job. So the very next day I turned up and she gave me the lowdown. She said that, the men came, men paid $150 and they were given 10 introductions, and the women, they were free. So my first task was to start sorting through profiles. So I had two piles. I had a pile of men, a pile of women. And I was being really, really careful. I was looking at everyone's interests. I was looking at their height, their star signs, their hobbies. I was putting people who like to go mountain climbing and abseiling with, you guessed it, people who like to go mountain climbing and abseiling. So I was really taking my time because, after all, these people could be future soulmates. They could also be, the mothers and fathers of each other's children. So I was, doing a really good job. There was no such thing as an Excel spreadsheet in those days. I think the fanciest thing in the office was a filing cabinet and possibly a calculator. So I started to make tables. My desk was beginning to look a bit like a crime scene investigation. I was starting to see how people's lives could intercept. I was looking at people, Margaret, James, do you think they could go together? No, Frankie and Florence? No, that wouldn't work. I was actually starting to do something with my life for the very first time. So Veronica left me alone for about 3 days. And by this stage, I still hadn't matched anyone. I still had piles here and piles there, things all over my desk. So she came in at the end of the third day and she said, "How are you going?" I said, at this stage, I was certain that she was just going to see, just how dedicated I was and, what an amazing job I was doing, sorting these people out. And I said, I haven't actually matched anyone yet because, I'm still looking at all the details. And she just gave one cursory look at the paperwork on the table and she said, "What have you been doing? Just put anyone with anyone." And I was just absolutely dumbfounded. I mean, surely these people deserve better. So I quickly shuffled some papers together and gave her what I could. I was further disturbed when I later on found some letters in her filing cabinet. I found 4 letters from 4 women who'd been writing to complain about this particular guy who was actually still on the books and, been harassing women and being a general arsehole. So I thought, I need to do something about this. So I went in to confront Veronica. I don't know where I sort of gathered up the courage, but probably drunk from the night before. And I went in and I said, "Look, this has to stop. I don't think we should be matching this guy with anyone." She gave me that look again. She just said, "Look, we're just not going to match him with those women again." And I thought, right, okay. So I went back to my office and I put him at the bottom of the pile. He stayed there for a week. I didn't match him with anyone. He stayed there for another week. I still didn't match him with anyone. And then he rang. He asked to be put through to the manager, which I did. she came back into the room, put him back on top of the pile. And I thought, fuck this. I can't work for this woman anymore. She's obviously got no scruples. She doesn't care for the safety of her clients. I don't think I can work here anymore. So I stopped going into work. A couple of weeks later, I got myself a job at an accountant's office. Not quite as glamorous, but by that stage, the sparkle of the city was sort of fading like my Scarborough Beach sunburn. So a week into my new job, I started getting phone calls. Phone calls from guys asking me out on dates. I thought, I sort of thought, well, maybe Veronica must have put me on a list. So I rang and I got the new girl, and she denied that I was on the list. And I said, look, I must be on the list somewhere. Can you please just make sure I'm taken off? And I hung up. Now, I'm not too sure, but I don't know a lot about Tinder. I certainly don't know as much about Tinder as Anna did. But I think it's probably a more honest way of dating. It sort of gives you those choices yourself, you know, leaving it in the hands of somebody else. I never did get any further phone calls, thank goodness. And I do often wonder about the guy who, he obviously should have been reported to the police, and whether or not he actually dated any women. Thank you.